Well, thanks everybody. We are excited to be here. My name is Greg Birch with the California Family Council, and behind me are standing some folks who are very concerned about what's happening at the Capitol today. There is a budget hearing, a joint budget hearing with the Assembly and Senators coming together because they are concerned about access that the federal government is limiting to something they call gender affirming care. Now, I've been coming up here for almost a decade, and I've been warning people about what they call gender affirming care for minors. But let's be clear that this is not gender affirming. What we're talking about is sex rejecting procedures. These are powerful drugs and irreversible surgeries that alter healthy bodies, and they are being given to children. Over the years, I brought doctors and medical experts to testify about the risks. These treatments sterilize, they stunt growth, they damage healthy organs. They often leave people worse off, not better, mentally and emotionally. And for a long time, we were dismissed. But now the evidence is catching up. Detransitioners like Layla Jane, young people who went through these procedures, are speaking out with their heart-breaking stories of harm and regret. And then countries like United Kingdom and those countries in Scandinavia are pulling back because the science simply does not support these interventions for minors. And now even voices within our own federal health agencies are raising concern. So here's the question. Why is California ignoring all of this? Instead of engaging with the evidence, critics attack and label us as hateful. That's not an argument, that's simply a distraction. Because the truth is this, we deeply care about kids. That's why we're here. We are here because children are being harmed and their stories are being ignored. At some point, our leaders must face this reality. This is not about compassionate care. This is a dangerous medical experiment on vulnerable young people, and it must end. The scriptures say in Proverbs 31:8, "Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute." Today, we are speaking for those who cannot undo what has already been done for them, to them. So let's be clear, these voices are not going away. They're going to grow louder, and whether through policy or the courts, accountability is coming. The question is whether our leaders will act now or be forced to act later. So I'd like to bring up right now Layla Jane, and she's going to tell her story about how these procedures affected her. Thanks so much.
Hello, my name is Layla, and I'm a detransitioner, or a survivor of gender medicine, or sex-rejecting interventions. I'm someone who underwent hormone blockers, the Lupron, and testosterone at 12, and shortly after I turned 13, I had a double mastectomy. The reason why is because when I was 12, I didn't like my changing body as puberty hit. I had experienced a lot of trauma, and I had undiagnosed and autism. Strangers on the internet helped to convince me that I could be trans, and I firmly believed in it. And I convinced my mom, who was told by doctors that I would die if she didn't accept me as her son and approve sex-rejecting interventions. I was almost immediately put on testosterone. I was fast-tracked through the medical system. You can hear its effects in my voice. I still have night terrors of when I was 13, when I was in the operating room. I dream of my surgeon being scrubbed in. I dream of the oxygen mask over my face and the IV being placed in my arm. I could still vividly feel it in my night terrors. I wake up sobbing very often. When I woke up from the surgery, my breasts were gone. They were gone before I could associate them with anything but traumatic memories. When the bandages came off, I looked down at my wounds. I was kind of horrified. There was a hollow pit in my stomach. Why would a doctor, who is supposed to be a healer, amputate healthy body parts? I did not turn into a girl. I did not turn into a boy. I just became a girl with scars. Gender identity is a farce, and it's used to monetize, traumatize kids, destroy their bodies, as well as doing the same to mentally unwell adults. And I did it all. And I still look female, and I always will be female. You know, people like Dr. Joanna Olson Kennedy are out here today in support of raising more funds for these interventions, like what I underwent. She's quoted on the record saying, "Here's the thing about chest surgery. If you want breasts at a later point in your life, you can go and get them." That's false. There's a lot more that goes into it. She's referring to implants. Implants will not feed my future children. Getting implants won't help the nerve pain in my chest that I deal with every day. It's a scam. It's harming healthy children.
Good afternoon. My name is Erin Friday. I'm a licensed attorney. I am the president of Our Duty, a nonpartisan activist group that is fighting against gender ideology, and we've been fighting vociferously for 5 years now. My daughter was a near victim of gender ideology. When she was 13, she said that she was a boy. Every medical provider I took her to, every mental health provider I took her to, told her that I must transition her, or like Layla's mom was told, she would commit suicide. I ignored all of them, and thankfully I did. But I want to talk about what California is about to embark on. $26 million to continuing butchering human bodies in the name of an ideology. Joanna Olson Kennedy is here today to speak on that. This woman, this doctor, set her sights on middle school kids. They advertised at my daughter's middle school here in Northern California for an all-day affair with surgeons, endocrinologists, psychologists to help scoop up these kids and profit off of their bodies. She is partnered with some of the most prolific surgeons in the country. One, Dr. Moser, who did over 2,000 sex-rejecting double mastectomies. She has been quoted as saying, if she transitions a cis kid, whose fault is it anyway? The child asked for it. So she takes no responsibility for harming kids. She has now moved her practice from Children's LA Hospital, where she honed her skills on kids who are in foster care, children who are drug-addled, children who were sex workers. That's where she started. Now she moved her practice to a private clinic because President Trump pulled the money, or threatened to pull the money from hospitals. So she's continuing to move forward. And she's here today, and she's going to convince every one of these Democrats to fund this monstrous butchery called sex-rejecting interventions, because that's really what it is. We have to ask why, and the answer's always money. The Democrats take so much money on this issue. This is how they fund and keep their seats. They know it's wrong, and they do it anyway, and they're sacrificing vulnerable kids' bodies and vulnerable adults. The adults have autism, OCD, internalized homophobia, and a whole host of other mental health issues. Joanna Olson Kennedy did the study. She did the study for the United States by the NIH, and it didn't turn out the way she wanted. She did the mental health study, and children did not improve after they got gender interventions. They actually went the opposite way, but she didn't like the data, so she buried it. She lied. She fudged it. And here she is, being honored with not one parent who fights this on that panel, with not one Detransitioner's voice on that panel, with not one gender critical doctor on that panel. And the Democrats should be ashamed of themselves. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Isaac Beck. I am the Director of Advocacy and Government Affairs for the Changed Movement. Changed Movement is a human rights and advocacy organization representing people who have questioned or are questioning their sexuality or gender, but do not embrace LGBTQ for their lives. Today, we speak on behalf of those harmed by the rush to affirm gender distress in children. As California considers expanding access to cross-sex hormones and surgeries for minors, a measure that actively defies the federal government and federal policies, we urge California lawmakers to listen to the growing voices of detransitioners and international medical associations, most notably those in the European Union, who warn of the harms to our children. Children need protection. Children deserve protection. They need truth. They need compassion, not experimentation and sanctioned mutilation. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah Kim, and I represent traditional biblical values for next generation for Asian organizations and community. I'm here to say a very one thing, and that everybody will agree. That is, sexual rejection, intervention is completely irreversible, irresponsible by those adults who are hungry for money. And we must protect our children. The purpose and reason we are here, gathered here, is to protect them. And I want to say, today, whatever happens in the hearing, we want to say boldly that let us remember our children need their parents. Our children need to understand their true identity. Their childhood is very precious. Let us all go and stand together and say no to sterilizing and mutilating our children's body. Not only their body, but psychologically and mentally, we are harming them. They are preciously, wonderfully, and fearfully created in the image of God. So thank you.
Well, thanks so much for watching. Sophia Laurie with the California Family Council is now coming up, and she's got some comments.
Good afternoon. My name is Sophia Laurie with California Family Council. And when I was young, I loved playing sports with the boys at recess. I always did everything my brothers did. And thank God I grew up in a time when adults didn't look at that and tell me that maybe I was a boy. Today, children are being told exactly that. In just a few minutes inside the California Capitol, lawmakers will consider expanding access to so-called gender affirming care, all while activists are urging them to add $26 million in taxpayer funding to grow these interventions. Have we really bought into the idea that the most compassionate response to a child in distress is to medically alter their body? Because the growing number of detransitioners tells a very different story. They were affirmed, they were approved, and now they are living with consequences that cannot be fully undone. That should stop every lawmaker in this building, because real compassion does not ignore risk. Real compassion does not silence those who have been harmed, and real compassion does not rush children into irreversible decisions. The most loving thing we can do is tell young people the truth. You are not a mistake. Your body is not wrong. You were born male or female, and that can't be changed. And your future should not be shaped by experimental medicine and political pressure. This is not about politics. This is about whether California will follow the evidence or continue down a path that more and more voices are warning us is causing harm. The California Capitol is sacrificing healthy children to the idol of transgender ideology and calling it compassion. I believe this is going to go down as one of the biggest medical scandals of my lifetime, and California Democrats in the Capitol are leading the way. Because once these decisions are made, there's no quick undo button. And the cost will not be paid by politicians. It will be paid by the children. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being with us and listening to what we have to say. Now we are going to end the press conference and go inside the building and let our voice be